Hey YouTube, Mucklet Douglas Bartholomew Reginald Esquire IV here, and today ArenaNet just released the ArenaNet Studio Update April 2022. I started reading it and there was some really juicy stuff in here, so I thought I would do a video on it. So, here we are, let's jump into it. Greetings, Tyrians! As promised in last month's Futures of Guild Wars 2 blog post, we're back with another helping of the latest happenings here at the ArenaNet Studio. In this edition, we'll be touching on Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons meta events and rewards, DX 11, World vs. World, and our ongoing new player improvement testing. So of course, for anyone who is not been keeping up with it, Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons meta, they have tweaked it numerous times, both in difficulty and in bug fixes, and also in the rewards. DX 11 has been in beta for quite some time now. I myself recently swapped over to using DX 11. The main thing that had me dragging my feet on it was there's two add-ons I use a lot, Arc DPS and Radial Mount Menu, and I didn't want to play without them. So I moved over to DX 11 when those moved over. World versus World, we of course are still having the on and off testing for World versus World alliances, where your specific server won't matter, but rather the guild that you're in for the alliance. And ongoing new player improvement testing. They have been trying to increase how good the new player experience is for quite some time, both as a prerequisite for the Steam release and just for, it'd be good for the game. Alright, so first off, final encounter of the Jade Sea meta event. From the outset, we designed the final boss of the WvW EoD Jade Sea meta event to be more challenging than most of our existing open world experiences. It's the epic finale of a story arc told over the course of 10 years after all. Yep. Over the past month, we've been making incremental balance adjustments to the meta event's final boss, with the goal of making it more accessible while still retaining an increased difficulty level. Between the mechanical changes we've implemented and the community's willingness to rise to the challenge, we've seen the number of successful clears increase dramatically in recent weeks. For context, in the first few weeks of March, only about 15% of boss attempts ended successfully. And that was when we had lots of spicy drama about it, because people were getting really upset. And on top of the fact that it was apparently failing 85% of the time, it also took about 2 hours of your time at that time period. My camera's going a little bit out of focus here. We're going to fix that, and there we go. Most recently, that number has risen to over 60%, putting it closer to existing world bosses and meta event success rates, while still being more challenging than any of them. In terms of balance, the fight is very close to where we'd like it to be. However, we will continue to monitor community feedback and completion rates, and as always, make adjustments as needed. Next week's release will also address a bug that causes the final boss to enter the bite phase more frequently than intended. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they nerfed how often it would do the bite thing, and then they did a bug fix, and then like unrelated to that, but related to the boss, and then it like broke the bite thing again, and then it just is like, okay, it unfortunately undid their previous work on that. EoD Meta Event Rewards. So originally the rewards, like the biggest thing was just the turtle, and then you needed to get the turtle egg from it. In addition to that, they've added the Antique Summoning Stone, or ASS if you prefer. However, pretty much all the rewards for almost all the metas in EoD is just stuff related to Gen 3 Legendary Crafting. Like, if you don't care about Gen 3 Legendary Crafting, they're not that good. But if you do care about Gen 3 Legendary Crafting, then yeah, you're golden. You're fantastic. In the weeks following the release of GW2 End of Dragons, we heard you loud and clear that the rewards for the new meta events needed a little more oomph, especially when you consider the difficulty and the time required to complete the events. In other words, there needs to be a stronger incentive to replay the content after the initial playthrough. I agree with that. Now, granted, you can of course play any game mode you want for fun, the forbidden F word. That said, if there's many things that you enjoy in the game that are fun, you'll probably pick the one that has the best payout. I myself love the combat system in Guild Wars 2. I visit every single game mode in the game. I'll play almost any of them. In the case of Dragon's End, it was 2 hours with a very high chance that it would fail. And if it fails, you get almost nothing. The loot is very much loaded onto the back end of the meta. You need to complete it to get it. So if you fail it, it's massive time investment lost and almost no gain. why would I do that when I could easily, go do something else? Now, this of course doesn't apply to the people that are doing it for fun. You've got your people trying to do timed runs or all Necro Dragon's End. I've seen a lot of that stuff that's been fun to watch. But as far as I myself, I'm not going to go to something that's got a very high fail rate that also doesn't pay well that I don't need to do. And I'm sure many people had similar feelings on that. Since then, we've removed a significant number of junk items from the loot tables, so you're more likely to get higher value items. Increased the value of the reward chest contents, and added a Hero's Choice chest for successfully completing these events. And while these are good improvements, we recognize a stronger incentive is needed if we want these events to be a long-term addition to the end-game open-world experience. A reminder for any players that may have forgotten, or maybe you don't know, there are meta events in almost every zone in the game. Some of them are done every 2 hours by the community, like Octovine. Some of them are never done hardly at all, like Serpent's Ire. The community basically will be like, okay, I've got 50 events to do, I don't have time for all of them. Which one is the most bang for my buck? Which one is the most, oomph, as they said, for the amount of time I'm going to spend there? And those are the ones that the community as a whole does repeatedly. So if they want this, and I can understand why they would, this is their finale, their 10-year conclusion, their coup de grace. If they want this to be done regularly, they're probably going to, keep working on this. This is especially true for Dragon's End, which contains our most challenging meta event to date. To help address this, in next week's update, we'll be adding a new Void-themed infusion, very good, as a rare drop to the Bounty of Dragon's End loot table. People have said numerous times that I've seen the suggestion in many, many places to add an infusion there. For example, Death-Branded Shatterer. It happens every 2 hours if you do the pre-events for it in Jahai Bluffs, I think. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. And the Death-Branded Shatterer's loot isn't that great, but it has a rare chance of dropping the Crystal Infusion, which makes your body look like you're branded. You're made out of purple crystal. And so people will do it all the time, just trying to get that jackpot item, even though the rest of the loot's not that great. So yeah, this is not really a surprise to me. I'm glad to see that they did, in fact, take this feedback. The Bounty of Dragon's End can be earned daily for successfully completing the meta event, and up to 5 additional chests can be purchased each week from the vendor Myung-hee, located in Xingje Monastery in Seitung Province. So the chests that can have the infusion can be purchased 5 times per week? So does that mean that you can have 13 attempts at this each week, if I'm reading this right? Once a day plus 5? Or 12. Yeah, math. Sorry, Norn brain. Interesting. Okay. DX11 update. In the July 2021 studio update, we've announced that we'd be upgrading our graphics API from DX9 to DX11 as part of our long-term support plans for GW2. This upgrade is the required first step in unlocking client performance improvements and graphical upgrades made available by DX11. James Fulop, a senior engine programmer on Guild Wars 2, posted a blog last year that covers the technical details of the update. And if you've made it this far, I'm going to have links to all of this in the description if you wish to just jump over to that. In September of last year, we introduced DX11 as an opt-in beta, and since then the team has been hammering away at bugs and crashes related to the upgrade. Today the feature is stable enough to move to the next phase. With the May 10th release, we'll enable DX11 by default for all newly created accounts. This means that all future players joining the game, whether it's from our official site or eventually from Steam, will benefit from DX11 from their very first login. We'll also remove the beta tag from the feature in the settings menu. That is very good. As a note, existing players who are not participating in the DX11 beta will not be automatically opted in on May 10th, but if you'd like to start using DX11, you can enable it from the graphics settings menu. We didn't expect DX11 to deliver substantial performance improvements all on its own, but we're seeing plenty of reports that indicate it's a nice bump to frame rates for many, so we encourage you to start using it. For me, myself, it's a very small improvement on my system. Again, the main reason I didn't swap over for quite some time was I was waiting for the add-ons that was more important to me to move over, and now they have. So it is a small improvement, but yeah, it's nice that some people are having like way better experiences with it. In the long run, we plan to deprecate DX9 support and move to making DX11 the default graphics settings for all new players, new and veteran alike. This will open the door for further improvements. World vs. World. World restructuring. In our last studio update, we mentioned that we are actively investigating the queue bug that causes players to get thrown to the back of the WvW queue after waiting in line on reset nights. It's frustrating to experience, and with the deep queues that happen during World restructuring beta events, it usually means that impacted players log off for the night,
A new arrival.
follow during recording, rather than wait in line again. Unfortunately, this issue isn't something we've been able to reproduce in our dev environment. To help diagnose the issue, in the April 19th update, we're adding new data logging to the game that will allow us to collect the information needed to identify the root cause. In the meantime, the team has shifted their attention to designing the user experience surrounding alliances, a sub-feature of World Restructuring that allows multiple guilds to matchmake together. We're also in the early phase of designing our next batch of reward improvements for the mode. We'll have more details on this in a future blog. Okay, something to watch for. Edge of the Mist instancing bug. Attention all enjoyers of player-organized GvG, that's Guild versus Guild, gameplay. There's a fix for the Edge of Mist instancing issue coming with next week's release. You'll be back to pin, sniping, and dodging in unison in no time. I think I might have seen Roy talking about this one, but I don't do the organized GvG stuff, just the mayhem type GvG stuff in World v World, so I haven't seen this one myself. Jadebot scavenging. In the March 29th update, we made a change to Jadebot scavenging protocols that made them no longer grant materials or trophies for player kills. Yeah, I didn't like that. This change was intended to address an exploit elsewhere in the game, but World v World players took splash damage in the process and were unfairly nerfed. We'll revert this change for World v World in the April 19th update. Happy scavenging. That's good to hear. A lot of people felt a little bit betrayed by that, because when they announced that Jadebots are coming out, they were like, and this works in World v World too, and everyone's like, whoa! And then like the main chip you would use in World v World, they were like, no, we're turning this off. So everyone's like, okay. So I think it's good that they're turning that back on. It doesn't break anything. It's very, very minor income, but it feels good to see it. March 29th, balance update follow-up. We made some significant changes to World v World profession and balance in the March 29th update, and for the most part, we like what we're seeing. However, there are a few lingering issues that we don't want to wait until June's profession update to address. We're still monitoring and formulating our plan on this front, so we're not ready to share details quite yet, but we wanted to let you know to expect some additional World v World specific balance adjustments in the May 10th release. Ooh, okay. New player improvements testing. As we mentioned in last month's studio update, we're taking steps to ensure a smooth launch on Steam later this year. This launch is an important... Just really quickly, the last time they gave us a date for the Steam launch was like the end of year before last. So this is kind of like, I would say don't be, telling your friends Steam later this year. I take it with a grain of salt. It'll be ready when it's ready, is what I would say at this point. This launch is an important piece of our long-term plans for growing the community, and we want to get it right. Yes, that is very important. There are a lot of people on Steam that if they are looking for a new game to play, they will go to the free section of Steam. Gamers on a budget. And they will check there. And if they find Guild Wars 2 and they download it and they try it, and their first experience is a bad one, they will uninstall it. And even if Guild Wars 2 fixes it later, they will not try it again. They're just going to remember that bad experience and be like, yeah, that's how it was. So they only get one chance to have this smooth launch. There are many other games, such as Black Desert Online, Terra, the Star Wars MMO, that when they went to Steam, they had massive population spikes. So it could be very good for the game if they can do this right. This launch is an important piece of our long-term plans for growing the community. We want to get it right. To prepare for this, we'll experiment with some changes to the new player experience with the goal of improving new player retention. To be clear, we're not undertaking huge overhauls at this stage, but rather focusing on smaller changes that can have a big impact on the player experience. We tried the overhaul approach back in 2014 with mixed results. In fact, some of our experiments this year will explore reversing some of the 2014 changes. I was not a content creator for Guild Wars 2 at 2014, so I would have to Google what those changes were exactly. I don't know off the top of my head. Typically, these tests will only impact small segments of new accounts for a limited duration. This is referred to as A and B testing. We'll deploy the changes to a small number of new players, study the results, then decide whether to make the change permanent, further iterate on it, or remove it from the game. It's worth noting that we expect some of our tests or variations of a test to not work out. That's the nature of an experiment. When we've had a successful test, we'll roll the change out officially and communicate those changes in our release notes. Most of the players reading this won't be impacted by these experiments, however some new players might take notice, so we wanted to give you a heads up and make sure you're in the know in case you see some curious comments. I would expect to see something like a little pop-up explaining to you like how to dodge or like how to handle a brake bar or do CC or something like that in earlier zones. But I guess we'll find out how they choose to do that. Studio break. In last month's update, we stated that the health and the well-being of our employees is a top priority for the studio. As exhilarating and fulfilling as it is to ship an expansion, it can also be stressful at times and comes at the tail end of 2 years of fast-paced development. And since then, the team has been working diligently to address bugs and feedback from the Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons launch. It's time for a breather. The studio is taking this week off to recharge our batteries before we get fully ramped up on our new projects and initiatives. In fact, many of us might be outside touching grass and enjoying the sunshine at this very moment. We'll be back into it for April 18th, which is 4 days from the day I'm recording this. End of transmission. That's all for this edition. If you haven't done so yet, please check out the Future of Guild Wars 2 blog post from last month, which I believe I did go over. I'll double check. It contains a lot of juicy details about our long-term plans for Guild Wars 2 and includes a roadmap of what's to come for the next 3 months. Speaking of coming soon, don't forget to catch the first returning episode of Living World Season 1 Flame and Frost next Tuesday. The April 19th release also include the Aetherblade Hideout Strike Mission Challenge Mode. That is the one with my Trin. As always, thank you for being a part of the Guild Wars community. We'll see you in game, Josh, Amy, and the Guild Wars 2 team. Just double checking, let's see, the Future of Guild Wars 2 blog post. Seeing credit, yes, this is where we found out that the population of the game had doubled, working on Steam, Living Wars Season Return. Yes, we did review that in a previous video. All right, awesome. I do love the continued open communication. You know, this is kind of still... I left some comments recently on some of Bellular's videos about that. Like, we love the open communication, but we're also kind of just like, I really hope this continues, you know? Because there was so long that it was quiet, and, you know, for the last couple months, it's been fantastic, and is continuing to be fantastic. So really, really excited about that. While I have this open, I'll just go ahead and add, if you didn't see it, there are a lot of sales happening in Latin America right now. I retweeted it, but I didn't make a video on it because it's a very niche part of my audience. But Path of Fire and Heart of Thorns is 50% off, and gem cards are 20% off in Latin America websites at the moment. And if you're interested in that, there's links to that both on this page, which I'll have linked in the description, and on keep an eye on Guild Wars 2's Twitter for stuff like that. And that's all for today. Definitely going to be keeping an eye on the future. Any more news, I'll get out to you guys as soon as I find out about it, as always. Have a good one, and if you have any additional notes to add on this topic, as always, please drop them in the description down below, and like the video if you want to help us out with that YouTube algorithm. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.